You'll better strap in for this one. Let's do our quick little fit check. This is my insulin pump, so keep that in mind. I'm a little guy today. Just a little guy. My new shirt, everything. Woo! Alright, before we get into the real content of today's video, which is gonna be a long and intense one. Firstly, thank you to everyone for being here. I feel like I just jump into videos a lot and I don't necessarily express my gratitude for those of you who continue to come back to my videos. So thank you really for being here. I don't have a ton of free time to be putting together big projects like this, which is why my content is relatively infrequent. So I appreciate those of you who stick around for sticking around. This being said, I have gotten a lot of requests for video topics to cover, a lot of which include gameplay guides or going through gameplay or things of that nature. And I was doing that for a little bit. I was experimenting with some guide content and educational content in that way, but that's not really what I want to do anymore. This is my niche, this research-based type of educational content on these specific topics, like the one I'm doing today and a lot of my other videos. Just bringing science in the field of research, which isn't always accessible to everybody, to the gaming sphere. But if you are interested in gameplay content, guide content, and things like that, I upload things like that on my Patreon account. So if you want to check that out, help support me, be able to make more content like this, then do check that out. That's where I post things like that. Otherwise, let's get into our video. We have a lot to cover today. So, identity is a term that tends to scare a lot of people, not just in the gaming community, but beyond that, societally. It's something that's now attached to more than just the way that somebody is, but it's become a weirdly political buzzword that people often use to discredit individuals that belong to specific groups. This occurs constantly in many circles. I honestly don't really know of any circles where what's called identity politics doesn't play a major role in keeping specific groups' voices as repressed as possible. But gaming is one where this is extremely prominent. Arguments have been presented throughout the advancement of video games and gaming communities that there's no place for the individual identity to be represented in games. Games don't exist to push your narrative about your own personal identity. They just exist for fun and don't need to appeal to everybody. Why not just play the game? Why do you care so much? Arguments like this often come from individuals where their identities are represented and catered to in games and gaming communities in general. So they honestly don't understand the importance of representation because they've been so catered to in every environment they enter that they assume that this is the normal way of doing things, when in reality their gaming experience is still being shaped by their own individual identity. This might be a scary topic for some people because when having these types of discussions, we've been made to feel like we're pushing some kind of agenda, when the right to exist is not an agenda or a belief system that you get to disagree with. It's just a thing that we all deserve. So to get everybody on the same page, I need to provide what is called a positionality statement. This is a research-specific term that my field and many other fields use to state the perspective that the research is coming from, so that when you consider my words and how I say them, you understand that my perspectives are coming from the identities that I hold. So keep in mind as I speak about this important topic that there are specific perspectives I am missing and I am not able to represent, so I encourage people with those missing perspectives to weigh in and contribute with their own experiences. So here's the statement. I am white, I am a cisgender woman, I am bisexual, I come from a poor background, but I am now a college professor, and I don't struggle with money. Given that I'm a college professor, I am well educated, and I have a doctoral degree. I have multiple physical disabilities and some minor mental disabilities, like anxiety disorder. I am Catholic and was raised that way, and my pre-college education was all within private Catholic schools. So basically, When I talk about my identity and share my opinions, I am empathizing and trying to comprehend and understand the importance of representation for as many groups of people as possible, but the shaping of my perspective has come from the identities I hold that I have just shared with you. The way that the gaming industry and many industries were designed was by and for the dominant groups of people, most often men, white people, and at least in the United States and European regions, heterosexual people. You get the idea. It's not that the gaming industry was full of misogynists and racists when it was being built. It's that the people who built gaming were people with access to building it, which were most often people who had money, education, and support, therefore white cisgender men. So these individuals were generating games and gaming communities based on their perspectives, shaping gaming into something that they enjoyed. As interest in video games increased, different types of people have begun to enter the scene and come up with new ideas that appeal to their perspectives. So when I'm talking about what I want to see in gaming as a white person born and raised in the United States, that perspective is likely already represented because the people who made a lot of games I like were also likely white people born and raised in the United States. However, when I talk about what I want to see in gaming as a disabled person, that might be a totally different perspective that isn't yet represented within gaming as we know it. Because I have a very definitive perspective, I have enlisted the help of some beta readers who have read through the script and have added more information based on their perspectives so that I can do my best to capture as much as possible. So thank you to my best friend Mushroom and my fiance Bren. So what is this identity I've been talking about? And why does it matter what anyone is if we're all just trying to play a dumb video game? From a social science perspective, identity includes the distinctive qualities or attributes that make an individual uniquely themselves. We don't just have one identity, we have a whole bunch of them, which taken together makes us who we are. I am not just a she, her woman. I am a professor, I'm a streamer, I'm a gamer, I'm a friend and a sister, I'm a cat owner, I'm an engineer. When I'm talking about being a woman, I am still all of these other things at the same time. Now, identity becomes more specific than just broadly, here is what I am. There are different types of identities. We have social identity, the social groups that someone belongs to, like gender, nationality, or fandoms. Like, for example, being a member of the Unite community is an example of a social identity. We also have role identities, or identities that reflect the roles we hold, like a parent or a friend. Another type of identity is value identity, which are identities we form around the way we see the world. These might be constructed in part by our role identities, but in general, they reflect our values or our principles. Like, for example, I am someone who really values being clean, or I am someone who stands for equity. If you have experience with a D&D alignment chart, that exists within value identity. Like if you're making a lawful character, they value the law. A chaotic character values individualism. Then we have our personal identities, representing our traits or characteristics that we feel we have, like I'm a creative person. All of these things build us into the unique person that we are. So let's talk about the gamer identity. Anyone can identify as a gamer or someone who likes games, and anyone can access a community of other people who also like the games they like. So why does it matter so much that we incorporate all these complicated identities into our games? We can't let everyone reflect the entirety of their identity in every game they play. We're all really complicated people with so many differences that it's impossible to represent every identity of every single person. And this is true. But we can represent some of their identities, and for many of us, that's enough. Nobody expects that every single characteristic they have and every single group they're a part of is represented in every single type of media they consume. I wasn't a gamer before I started playing Pokémon Unite. I wasn't a streamer or a content creator or a caster before Pokémon Unite. Becoming part of this gaming community allowed me to build these identities alongside my existing identities. Now, what does this mean? I am going to go specifically to my field of study, which is engineering education, to pull some research that I'm familiar with. There are a few researchers in my field who I actually know personally and have worked with who study the concept of engineering identity. Within the engineering student, they balance personal identities, social identities, and engineering identities. With the engineering identity comes 3 constructs of interest, performance/competence, and recognition. This comes from the umbrella theory of professional identity, defined as the self that has been developed with the commitment to perform competently and legitimately in the context of the profession, and its development can continue over the course of the individual's careers. Basically, there are multiple types of professional identities depending on your field, and I'm familiar with engineering identity. For a student to view themselves as an engineer, they have to be interested in becoming one, they have to be recognized by others as an engineer, and they have to feel like they can perform as an engineer and understand engineering content. What researchers have found as they've researched this initial framework is that many students are balancing social and personal identities that don't fit the mold of a traditional engineer. We know engineers to be rich white dudes because those are the people who could get educations when engineering was becoming a very crucial profession. So people who aren't rich white dudes were having more trouble formulating their engineering identities because they couldn't make the social and personal connections required. Basically, these students had to leave their social and personal identities at the door, drop everything unique about themselves to get through engineering school and be more similar to rich white dudes. This is a fact. This isn't just some woke DEI opinion where all the woke people want to tell you how white men suck and everything like that. This is a real experience that students have that's been built out of the traditional way we teach engineers. As an engineering student, I did experience this. If I was too much of a woman while in my very male-dominated electrical engineering classes, I would notice how that made interaction with professors and other students much more difficult. It didn't mean everyone was being mean to me, and they really weren't. I had a good experience generally. That's just the way the engineering environment is built. So I had to blend in with all the men if I was to be taken seriously enough as an engineer without the caveat of being a woman. My point is that many students drop their personal and social identities while acting within their engineering student role, which can be debilitating and harmful. It's been theorized that this is one of the reasons why we can't seem to get students within underrepresented social identity groups to persist through engineering programs. And unfortunately, with the current presidential administration in the United States ripping grant funding for many of the researchers doing this really important work, we might never be able to solve this problem. Why do I bring this up exactly? Well, I theorize that the concept of engineering identity could be applied to a lot of things. Not just engineering, but maybe a business student identity or an education student identity may follow a similar pattern, and we may see underrepresented groups in those areas have similar struggles. Beyond the student, I feel like this could be a good model to represent gaming identity. We have our personal identities and our social identities, and when we're within a gaming space, we adopt a gaming identity. What kind of gamer are you? What kind of games do you play? Do people see you as a gamer? Do you feel like you're good enough at gaming to exist within this community? And let's face it, gaming is a cis male-dominated industry. So when people of other genders enter gaming communities, it's possible that they are balancing their social identity of gender with their gaming identity and flipping between them depending on the situation. Am I allowed to be a woman here? Or do I have to cover that up so that I can be recognized as a gamer? This is called identity negotiation. Even within gaming itself, specific games geared more towards niche communities are not really considered games by the dominant gaming identity. Things like mobile games, they require strategy and gaming skills, but they may not be viewed by gaming society as a real gamer because of the platform or the style of game they play. So it adds another step to the identity negotiation process. When games and gaming communities allow for the Venn diagram of identity to look more like a circle, where people don't have to negotiate between identities and simply exist as all of them while in the gaming space, this makes for a more diverse, safer, and more enjoyable environment for these people. Nobody else who doesn't have to do this mental gymnastics of identity negotiation is affected negatively because their needs are already being met. It's a first-year engineering principle that I teach called universal design. Expand to the most extreme users that you can think of to capture the extreme users that aren't being represented, and then within that, you'll also cover everyone else. We now understand that the gamer identity might be an identity that has to be negotiated with other identities for one to be able to fully become a gamer. But what we haven't answered yet is, why do they need to become a gamer at all? Representation makes us feel good about ourselves, but what does it do? A lot of research has been done across many different fields that representation does matter. Seeing something or someone that we can relate to makes us feel seen and heard, makes us feel like we belong there. In my field of engineering education, research indicates that students who are exposed to other students or professors with similar identities, they have better persistence in engineering. This is true of professional identity in general, where it's been reported that having role models with shared identities is absolutely crucial to the development of professional identity. This is why many student clubs or groups are created to foster these communities. When I was in college, I was a member of the Diabetes Link. It was formerly College Diabetes Network, which was specific to diabetics in college. I was also a member of OSTEM, which is a club for STEM majors who are also members of the LGBTQ+ community or allies of that community. These types of things also exist for specific majors. Like I was an electrical engineering major, so we had IEEE clubs specific to electrical engineers, stuff like that. This is something we see form in gaming too. People of specific groups creating gaming communities for individuals like them to enjoy gaming together. This exists within things like Twitch guilds, where it's a group of streamers of specific identities or for specific categories. In the Unite community, we've had servers for women and people who support women in the community. Some streamers have communities where they bond over other interests. This type of thing often happens naturally. When these types of cohorts exist within gaming communities, individuals have somewhere to go and people to enjoy gaming with that already share some of their same experiences and interests. I have a Discord server with a fantastic community, and I've met many friends there, and even though I made the server for the Unite community, we now have channels for other games and activities so people can share and talk. A lot of people in my server don't even play Unite anymore, but they still enjoy the community we've built. This type of thing helps us build our gamer identities. Now, this is just one part. The communities surrounding games are one part of the gamer identity. When people stream games, make content, make servers, create discussions, or social media communities, it helps us find other people and motivates us to engage within the game itself. It's been reported in many studies that this is absolutely needed in online gaming communities because people that do not fit the expectation of the gamer identity often face harassment and are much more likely to have negative identity-related experiences. According to multiple studies, both games themselves and gaming communities position the default gamer identity to be that of a young, cisgender, heterosexual white male. So much of gaming has been built around that identity. Though many people who game do fit that general identity, it certainly isn't everyone. Researchers predict that because of this, people who don't fit the traditional mold have more trouble existing in gaming communities and in leadership positions, particularly non-white people, women and non-cis people, and queer people. These people have to negotiate their identities to create a positive gaming experience for themselves, specifically those with intersectional identities. For those who may not be familiar with the term, intersectionality refers to people who navigate multiple identities at once and exist at the intersection of them. So, for example, a trans person of color must navigate through both transphobia and racism, which may present differently at different times. Some gamers with these identities have reported switching between them in different situations, like presenting more of their trans identity but less of their identity as a person of color in a more queer-centric space, but presenting more as a person of color and less as a trans person in a non-white-centric space. Famous Black feminist Audre Lorde spoke a lot about this and once said, "There's always someone asking you to underline one piece of yourself, whether it's Black, woman, mother, slur for lesbian, teacher, etc., because that's the piece that they need to key into. They want to dismiss everything else." Consistently navigating through these difficult situations across intersectional identities has made it particularly difficult for gamers who don't fit the traditional mold to persist in the gaming industry. According to one study, women make up nearly half of all gamers, yet represent only about 1/5 of the industry workforce, while calls for more diverse representation are sometimes dismissed as political activism rather than legitimate concerns about inclusion. One study conducted in 2024 researched leadership positions in the gaming industry and found that every single one of the women that they studied reported discrimination or harassment of some kind, whereas men did not report it at all. And in fact, were not even aware of their existing gender-based exclusion in their industry. When accounting for white women as opposed to women of color, one study found that white women often navigate gender discrimination alone, whereas women of color tend to face both gender and racial discrimination. For example, white women may be able to navigate by avoiding the use of voice chat in gaming circles, whereas women of color both avoid voice chat and avoid any text-based discussion about their ethnicity or race and structure their speech to avoid anyone figuring out that they are a woman of color because they feel it invites targeted harassment. Point being, players with social and role identities that don't fit the mold of a traditional gamer, especially those with intersectional identities, are constantly navigating through gaming spaces while negotiating their identities, trying to decide which identities are safe to reveal at any given time. Even with many groups now existing to invite inclusion and encourage these individuals, studies are still showing that women, people of color, non-cisgender, and queer individuals are constantly harassed due to these identities. These people are just simply viewed as other. They are not of the traditional mold, and no matter how inclusive we get or how supportive we are, people with these identities are separated, always attached to that identity rather than being allowed to simply be considered a gamer. That's not to say that people aren't proud of holding these identities simultaneously or wish to not be viewed as a woman in gaming. I find it difficult to explain these complex topics without using an analogy or a personal experience, so I will. As a caster in the Pokémon Unite space, I am very proud to be a queer, disabled woman creating content and representing the casting community. However, given that I do not fit the mold of what we expect casters to look like, I will always be judged first on being a woman, second on being a caster. My casting talent is judged based on the attributes of being a woman. I am not compared to the male casters based on talent. I am assigned the woman identity, and then I am considered for my casting talent. If I mess up, it's because I'm the girl caster. Same with the women in the professional scene, where they will never be pro players without being a woman first. And let me stress, even when they are supported, they will still always be a woman first. My fiance said that my casting accomplishments are assumed to be because I am a woman and because of forced diversity. They don't actually believe a woman can be a good caster, so they relegate your mistakes to fit their narrative. It's great that we move toward more supportive spaces, but we aren't there yet because it's still viewed as okay for people to other gamers based on their identities alone. I mean that just last week, I was getting this clip on my Twitter timeline of a professional League of Legends player saying that women aren't good at gaming because they get emotional on their periods. And the worst part is this guy wasn't even trying to be sexist. He was just extremely misinformed and clearly trapped in the mindset of the traditional mold of a gamer. I was targeted for being a DEI caster. There are always clips circulating on TikTok or Twitter of men yelling sexist things to women when they use voice chat. These things still exist. And I know that much of the argument is that individual people have the right to an opinion, but factually, another person's right to exist in a space, or exist at all, is not an opinion. And maybe I shouldn't be talking about this, but I'm going to anyway, because there is actually research that backs this up. And as I've said, many gamers have taken to creating communities by and for people like them, so they can have safer areas to exist as their entire selves, which has led to many amazing things. In research, they call this alternative spaces. So when people of marginalized status seek a space for themselves and go on to create one, they face some very specific barriers. For one, they are simply not including everyone, and people get mad. How can you say you're for inclusion if you don't include me in your little group too? In these alternative spaces, they're not about that. They are about safety and comfort for marginalized groups because mainstream spaces do not welcome them, nor do they adhere to their needs. Even if they say anyone is allowed here, they do not welcome them. In the Unite community, a close friend of mine who means nothing more than to do good decided that she and many other women in the community were facing so much harassment that she wanted to create a women's-only Discord server where we could all hang out and play some games. This was quickly infiltrated and ridiculed by men in the community, claiming that they deserve to be in it, and they were mad that they were being excluded. So, my good, kind-hearted friend tried to be more inclusive, allowing men into the server who people knew and deemed trustworthy, and still tried to create chats within the server for women only, and honestly, it was a disaster. Suddenly, we had to verify whether someone was a woman to let them into the chat, and there were mods set up to monitor interactions because so many people were making multiple accounts just to come into the server and harass people. And that defeats the entire purpose. If there is a space created for women, and you are not one, why do you need to be in it so bad? The other day I was scrolling on Twitter and I came across a tweet advertising that there was a Discord server for trans people to connect with each other, and I thought to myself, cool. And then I scrolled past it because I'm not trans, and they deserve their space to connect with others of a similar identity group. But people in our community, a community that I really love, purposely destroyed a space that was clearly not meant for them because they can't handle the idea of everything in the world not catering directly to them. And maybe I'm about to be controversial here, but even men who I'm close friends with who joined this server, in my personal opinion, shouldn't have. Whether you're there to be supportive or not, go be supportive in other Discord servers. This space wasn't created for you. Let people of marginalized identities who are harassed daily for their existence have a space for them and not you. Unfortunately, with this situation, we kind of just have to depend on an honor system. Inclusivity is extremely complex and difficult to pin down, so companies with an inclusivity policy create them based on inclusivity for everyone, which limits safety for people that actually need it. So the women's server can't actually exclude men by Discord's policy, whether it's an alternate space for a marginalized group or not. Though plenty of research exists to prove that these types of things are needed, and I have listed plenty of sources for you below, it's too difficult to navigate the nuances. And in my opinion, this is the best way for a company to do it because it would create too many issues for that company otherwise. But also, in my opinion, sometimes if a community is not supposed to be for you, just go find another one. There are plenty. In fact, the entire gaming industry is already for you. This section has focused so far on gaming communities and how gaming communities help and hurt the building of the gamer identity in conjunction with the other identities a person holds. But we can also talk about games themselves, the actual mechanics or design of the game, and the communication from the game developers or those who work closely within the game. There is a key difference brought up in the literature between performative and transformative when navigating this type of thing in gaming. Performative would be what people refer to as checking the box, tossing a character with a specific identity into a piece of media where that character is literally only that identity and nothing else. And transformative is when you build something truly relatable, engaging, and appealing to people of marginalized identity groups, shaping the way people think and feel. Research says that people are motivated to play games through the pillars of self-determination theory: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. In other words, how much freedom you have, how good you feel at it, and how it relates to an individual's personal connection with it. That third one of relatedness has been proven to increase as players see more of themselves within the game, whether it be the design, characters, or communications. As I've said, representation matters. When you see someone like you, it encourages you to do what they did, or even just to keep going. However, when you see representation in a way that doesn't encourage relatedness, it becomes very obvious that there's no care taken toward broadening the spectrum of who's allowed to have a gaming identity. It's just to get you to stop bothering them about it. Let me explain further using a quote from a participant in a study that investigated intersectional identities within gaming. This quote, again, does have a slur that I'm not going to say, but I want you to imagine how powerful this quote really is in its entirety. Every June, my game feed is full of rainbows, but the next day, when I'm called a slur in chat, those same companies do nothing. You'd think that people demeaning others because of their identities would be cause for a ban or suspension or something, but it's just not. The performative inclusivity exists in a separate realm from what these communities actually need, and research has shown what that is. It's representation from characters in a game, community members, designers working on it. This is actually something I talk to my students a lot about to show them how important universal design is. Much of the world was designed by one type of person, meaning that it's the easiest for that one type of person to navigate it. When we designed buildings, we weren't really considering that some individuals won't be able to open the doors to those buildings because the people designing them didn't have that personal experience. It's not that they were actively ableist, it's that they didn't even consider it. When we designed video games, we weren't considering the different types of people that were going to play it because those weren't the people consulting on it. So all our characters were white dudes who did stuff white dudes find cool, and that's pretty much it. There's a white guy hero, and he saves a hot girl who's drawn with a very specific body type, and white dudes eat that up. Not that I don't also eat it up, but because the infrastructure of society was established so long before we started to realize that other people should have rights, we can't really start over and build society from scratch in a way that works for everyone. So we've just started modifying the things that already exist to fit the needs of more people. So instead of having inaccessible buildings, we now add those little buttons on the side of the doors so people can press them to get in. And even though it probably would have just been better to have better doors in the first place. So instead of gaming just being created to be inclusive in the first place, we have to go back and update things as we give marginalized voices the opportunity to be involved in the design process. So it's not that gaming companies, or any company for that matter, have DEI hiring initiatives to ruin opportunities for white men. It's that in order to make advances, we need the experiences of people of as many different backgrounds and experiences as possible. Only then can we all feel comfortable developing our own gamer identities. All right, I'm back. I've never had to take a break while filming before. I've never done that, but there's still so much left. I'm like halfway through the script. There's still so much left. I had to take a break and pee for a second, get a drink. I also am just getting over a cold. My voice is like, it needs like a second, but anyway. Some games and communities are fantastic examples of inclusive design and catering to the building of the gamer identity. This is going to be the section of the video where I talk about pronouns. Unfortunately for humanity, we invented the concept of gender because we thought that our biological sex is equivalent to a social role, though that's been proven untrue for many years. That's still the way society as we know it was created. So as we know, it's really difficult to dismantle and accommodate for this information. Plus, it doesn't help that many people are against this dismantling for whatever reason. Sometimes people just don't really like for things to change. Other times people have been lied to or are afraid of progression or science, so it makes things harder. But as some of us have accepted the scientific reality of gender being nothing really, but still a way that people express themselves in society and the way that it exists, we've tried to come up with ways to describe this gender thing. We've learned that gender identity and gender expression are different things, and we've also learned that neither of them have anything to do with what our body looks like. Some of our gender identities match with what we think they should based on what parts we have, and some of ours don't. Same goes for gender expression. I got the default settings in terms of identity, where I was born and assigned girl, and I'm still girl to this day, but my gender expression is very fluid. But it's so complicated because identity is very qualitative, so we don't really have a good way of telling people what our gender is. So we have decided to get as close as we can by telling people how they should refer to us in English speech, which is why we use pronouns. Pronouns, honestly, don't tell us as much as we'd like them to. but it's the best thing we've got at the moment. Like, just because someone uses she, her pronouns doesn't mean her gender identity is female. It's just saying, here's how you should refer to me when talking about me, please. Similarly, if someone uses they, them pronouns, it doesn't mean they're not a woman, but we have qualitative brains in a quantitative world, so we make do with what we have. For gaming, representation means we need something quantitative, something defined to use in our design process. Some games, like Pokémon, offer 2 different character options where one is supposed to look male and one is supposed to look female, so people can pick which one they want. Apparently, this wasn't true of every Pokémon game, where in Red and Blue and Gold and Silver, you were just defaulted to boy. There is only one gender, and it's boy. People don't always select the character with the gender that matches their gender identity, so it doesn't really matter, but we have the option, which is cool. As we realize that people would feel more relatedness if they had more options, some games have taken to adding pronouns to choose from instead of a gender to choose from. Some games have added options to choose a name. Sometimes games have just let the player customize their characters from scratch. Some people get angry at this, so let me explain why that's dumb. I love stuffed animals. I've always loved stuffed animals. Much of my childhood was spent collecting and playing with stuffed animals. A lot of them are right there, and they all had names and personalities that were well documented in writing. And I also created an alternate world in which my stuffed animals were all going on their own adventures. It's literally just fabric and stuffing, but it's very common for children and even adults to add human-like characteristics to them. For me, when I got a stuffed animal, I would decide for myself if it was a boy or a girl. Sometimes it had a name tag too, and I never pick what was on the name tag since I wanted the creative freedom to choose my own name for it. Sometimes I would get a stuffed animal and it would be a boy one, and then I would hang out with it for a little bit and then be like, wait, no, it's actually a girl one. In Webkins, you would add a new Webkin to your island and you'd get to name it and then decide if it's a boy or a girl. Nobody was asking if you were a boy or a girl. It was asking you to be creative and imagine a world where you and your animal are friends. We all did this. It was just character customization. With games, there's nothing about the characters we're playing as that make them real people or things that have real feelings, but as human beings, we still ascribe personalities to them. And having the option to customize to be whatever we want just adds more opportunities for creativity and more opportunities to feel a sense of relatedness with the game. I play a game called Finch, which is a self-care app that lets you set tasks for yourself while raising a little bird. Every day when you complete your tasks, the bird goes on an adventure and comes back with a cute little piece of dialogue to share with you, allowing you to answer in different ways so that you can build the bird's personality in different ways. I thought it was really cute when I first got the app and it asked me to name my bird, asked me to choose pronouns for my bird. It's the same thing as Webkins, except instead of asking for an option between one of 2 genders, it asks for pronouns to cover a variety of genders that can't necessarily be named in a few quantitative options. Same with other games that offer a variety of pronouns to choose for characters. It just gives us more options. I played Moonstone Island for a while, which is like Stardew Valley, but with little Pokemon-like creatures to collect, and it had a lot of options for pronouns during character select, and I picked my character to use any pronouns, not because I do in real life, but because I thought it was fun to customize a character this way. Nobody knocked on my door like, hey, are you really using any pronouns these days? Because it's just a video game. But having a character that I spent so much time with and interacting with NPCs that flip between different pronouns when talking about my character was fun and allowed me to explore relationships with them in different ways. Giving more options for pronouns or gender expressions in gaming is really just the next thing in line as we adjust society and learn more things about the way people feel related in video games. I'm like, I don't know, guys. Sometimes even in games like Pokémon where you get 2 gender options, I know plenty of people who just pick one. It has nothing to do with what you look like or anything. Sometimes guys pick a girl character, sometimes girls pick a guy character. Like, does it matter if you have to flip through a couple more options to get to the one you want? Some people just like a lot of options, dude. And pronouns are the easiest and best thing we got in terms of gender. Many games also offer skin tone options and things like that, clothes to wear, and just stuff that lets us have the gaming experience that we want to have. So let's talk about Pokemon Unite. I'm a Unite content creator. Did you know that I'm a Unite content creator? You'd be surprised how much of Pokemon Unite includes elements that encourage identity building and relatedness. First is the character. The Pokemon Company in general doesn't do much for character customization, but the character themselves isn't really the point. It's the Pokemon and developing relationships with the individual Pokemon on your team. You get 2 options that look exactly the same with a different hairstyle, and you pick one. Same thing with Pokemon Unite. And honestly, I've seen multiple people complain about not being able to change genders in the game because the trainer fashion they make for the girl model is just so much better, and I wholeheartedly agree. Nobody's asking for this because of woke, by the way. People just like having the freedom to customize their character how they want. But generally, yeah, the feminine style clothing in Unite is just so much better. Like, infinitely better. So that's thing number 1. Character customization could be better, but in general, the trainers aren't the most active part of the game. You really only see your trainer in the lobby and on your trainer card, so it's not the biggest focus of the gameplay experience. However, I do like dressing up my trainer and developing kind of signature outfits, which absolutely contributes to the identity building experience. Another thing that Pokemon Unite does to encourage identity building is the Pokemon Holowear. This is the only Pokemon game where the Pokemon get cool outfits that they get to put on, and that is honestly amazing. Well, I guess it's not the only game because sometimes, like, Pokemon Go has like, oh, you get to catch a Pikachu with this hat on, but you know what I mean. Many people in the Pokemon community have built their identities in part by liking specific Pokemon or specific Pokemon types, and in Unite, this is accentuated by opportunities to play those Pokemon and dress them up. Many people know me for my Meowscarada, or at least know that I love that Pokemon, so putting little outfits on him just makes it even more fun and exciting to jump into a game with that gold badge and sparkly little dress. People have their signature holowear that they like, and I even associate some of my friends with the specific holowear they choose to wear all the time on their mains. Like, whether or not you hate Pokemon Unite, they are very good at designing really cool skins to make the Pokemon look cool. If you dig a little deeper here, the types of holowear offered are also really important for identity building and give people even more opportunities to build relatedness. Pokemon in general tend to be gendered in a specific way, either by the creators of Pokemon themselves or by fans, regardless of what their gender marker is in game. Starter Pokemon, for example, are mostly male, but Pokemon like Delphox and Primarina, people tend to say are girly Pokemon, either way. In fact, the story of the creation of Lugia was really interesting, and the creator of this Pokemon actually wanted this Pokemon to be considered as a maternal Pokemon with a woman voice actor, but this didn't end up being the case, and the higher-ups went with a male voice actor anyway. So in terms of holowear, creators usually have their own ideas of what gender the Pokemon are, even though we know that the gender markers of the Pokemon in the game, and it doesn't often match. Like, Sylveon and Clefable are male, and Dodrio and Zoroark are female. Regardless of this gender marker, we see pink Pokemon like Clefable with little dresses and skirts. We also tend to see a lot of fluidity across Pokemon, where Umbreon and Leafeon have little dresses, Delphox has a little tuxedo, Mew has cute little dresses, and also has a Battle Pass holowear, which is kind of boyish looking. I call it Little Boy Mew. Little Detective Mew as well. So you can have more freedom to put your Pokemon in holowear that you like, whether it's created to replicate traditionally gendered clothing or not. Next up is the gameplay experience, such as chat wheel customization and voice chat options. It doesn't seem like much, but people customizing their chat wheel offers elements of identity building. For example, in Spraggle's community, some of us remember when having the watch out command on the chat wheel indicated being a Spraggles fan. And some people would ping watch out at the start of a match to show their team that they knew what they were doing. I personally still do it, and I still have the watch out command on my chat wheel. Some people may have inside jokes with friends about the commands they include on their chat wheels too, because some of them are really funny. In terms of voice chat, I touched on this a little bit earlier about having the opportunity to communicate with the team can be an opportunity for identity building as well as expression, but usually using voice chat just gets you banned, so I'd probably Just recommend using voice chat outside the game itself. The last thing I want to point out about gameplay specifically is the gamer tag customization. And this was actually one of my inspiration points for making this entire video, because there was a recent controversy within the Unite community about player gamer tags getting banned. You have like 12 characters to name yourself in the game, and this is an extremely important feature to many people, myself included. When you get to name yourself, you're attaching yourself to that tag, and others attach characteristics to you based on that gamer tag you choose. Many people have used the same gamer tag for every game they've played since childhood, which is where I fall. Using Husky Star as my gamer tag connects me to my young self when I first started gaming, and became the identity that the community knows me as. I'm Husky, the Unite streamer to you. I'm not Alex, the engineering professor. I have developed a new identity with new interactions and a new platform to share my thoughts because I chose this name in Pokemon Unite. This is very common with players inside the community, where they often choose gamer tags that are the same as the other social media accounts so that others can recognize them if they run into them in the game. For many creators and professional players, adding a tag associated with their platform or their team name is an identity building activity. I need a gummy worm. My blood sugar's low. What's your favorite gummy worm? For many creators and professional players, adding a tag associated with their platform or their team name is an identity building activity. Team name tags help build community with the other team members and provide additional recognizability in-game. And platform tags like TTV or YT can not only help advertise their platforms, but also encourage people to interact and become part of their community. As a small creator, having TTV attached to my gamer tag is how I've met many of the individuals who are now really important members of my community and some of my best friends. They play with me or against me in a game, they stop by my chat to talk, and then they end up wanting to be part of what I'm building. Unite is also a small enough game where you tend to play with and against the same players, especially if they play a lot. So I run into many North American players who I follow on Twitter or are members of the community, and having my name as something familiar is recognizable to them, and it makes for a better gaming experience. Recently, there was some kind of bug in one of the updates that caused players with TTV and YT tags and many other random letter combinations to get their names deemed inappropriate and replaced with a default player name, which is just player followed by a bunch of numbers. This happened to me and many members of the community, and Twitter went into an uproar about this incident, especially because there wasn't any communication or warning as to why it seemed to be TTV and YT getting targeted. Was Unite trying to stop people from advertising their platforms? Was it a mistake? Was it something with Twitch demanding that the tag not be used elsewhere? People were speculating and called on the community ambassadors for help, and we were in that Discord server like scorched earth trying to get into contact with someone to figure this out. Eventually, we learned it was a mistake, and everyone who was affected got their names changed back. But there were people talking about how it's not that big of a deal anyway, and they weren't really sure why we got so mad about it. And I literally said in the ambassador chat, it's because it's an identity for us. Many bigger creators or even smaller creators with Twitch channels choose not to put a TTV tag, either because they're big enough where they don't need to, their name is too long to fit, or because they would rather not have people find them on Unite games. At this point, I feel like I might be a recognizable enough figure where if I didn't have a TTV tag in my name, people might still be able to find me, but I have built my identity off of this name. And since so many members of my community found me through playing with me in a game of Pokemon Unite, I feel like removing the tag would be removing potential community members or connections I could make. It's part of who I am, and many others felt the same way. There was a short time where I changed my tag as a joke to Meowtua to match with my best friend Pikachu. And even then, when I purposely changed my name, I felt like I kept seeing members of the community who I knew well, but they wouldn't recognize me because my name was different. So then I got changed to Play or whatever. I literally logged in and played one game and saw someone's name that I knew, and I was so upset that they wouldn't be able to tell that it was me. A gamer tag is literally like a name, something you attach to yourself and others attach it to you and recognize that part of your identity. The tag or tags you choose are a quantitative representation of the gamer identity you built or are in the process of building. So if you're still wondering why we cared so much about the incident where Unite tried to cancel TTVers, this might be able to explain why. And for those who are a little confused and don't really know what happened, eventually it was resolved and everyone affected by the name change had their names changed back after a few days. TTVers win. Mister, Karma. Big stretch. W-word. Little hair the whole time. Wow, that's annoying. Boop. It is now time to talk about the competitive scene. Competitive esports and identity is a topic only recently explored in research, but much of this research points to a competitive identity being crucial for success in esports, similar to any traditional sport. According to a 1980 identity development theory, humans become a self through a series of crises that require a resolution of some kind. How they deal with these crises often determines how they end up forming their identities, often through experimentation with different identities and a desire to differentiate themselves from their parents or family members they are used to being around. This theory is fairly outdated, and as we learn more, we've kind of moved away from that general conceptualization. But one doctoral thesis points out that many esports players tend to get into esports somewhere in the middle of transitioning into adulthood in terms of identity development. I'm not saying esports players are all young kids. I mean adulthood in the sense of realizing oneself. Everyone comes to a realization of themselves at different points in their development and may even go through different stages of identity development as adults. And esports has the unique opportunity to highlight a transitional phase for many people, especially since the sport is still relatively new as an option for college or even careers. There's also the concept of seriousness positioned within the competitive identity development. Playing video games is viewed traditionally as a leisure activity or a hobby, so players taking a video game seriously requires the hurdle of developing that competitive identity or desire to take the sport seriously and develop the required skills beyond just being good at a leisure activity. I did have the opportunity to talk with Slashcan about this if you watched that video, where he pointed out that we're just now starting to get to the point in society where esports is being taken more seriously, not just by players, but by the general population, and we're realizing the importance of mental and physical health management for these individuals. Within that comes identity development and strengthening. There's the role identity of esports player, there's the personal identity of competitive person, there's even the value identities of the act of identifying with esports as a career or an activity that one believes is worth their time. And additionally, competition validates the competence construct of professional identity. So a lot of self-discovery comes with becoming a professional esports player. It's getting hot. It's like a little breezy out. Maybe we can cool it down in here, which means here come the cats. They want to see it as well outside. As I've talked about, this self-discovery and development of the competitive identity is made even more complex by the existence of intersectional identities. I personally would predict that the more intersectional identities one has, the more complex it is, but currently research has only really covered gendered differences between men and women. And unsurprisingly, women in competitive esports have a much harder time developing the competitive identities and getting through the reconciliation process than male players, likely due to competitive esports being such a male-dominated industry. Wait, oh my god. What is... Girl, I know plenty of women who play Pokémon Unite and are even on professional teams, some of whom I'm very close with, but there are very few who have actually made it to the top ranks despite how good they actually are. This year, North America got to root for Wailord from Team Version 1, who made it to the world stage as their support player. We've also previously seen Ware from France, another support player who is extremely talented. And there are also multiple other professional women players who we've seen compete, like Luna, Sobi, Jade, previously Melody, and Stockings. But what we've also seen very consistently is these women constantly face barriers to entry and difficulties within the community itself. Besides the obvious things like harassment and ridicule for their gender identities, women players are always judged for being a woman and always compared to each other. I'm not going to say names specifically here, but I feel like this anecdote is necessary. I saw a tweet one time by a very kind member of the community who was praising one woman professional player for being the new version of a retired woman professional player. Even though this tweet was extremely supportive and kind, it was also misplaced and directed at the gender identity of the two players rather than their skill level or accomplishments. I mean, these two players both play attacker mainly, but their Pokémon pools and play styles are completely different, and they've never played on the same team or with the same people. And their roads to building themselves up as competitive players were completely different. If these players were men, they never would have been compared to each other. Besides possibly just if they were playing against each other as attackers, and then they could have been compared as the attacker players on the teams. Like I said before, even when people are supportive, women will always be women before they earn the right to be recognized as anything else. Pokemon Unite, as a relatively new esport, has done a lot to encourage identity development and is also constantly changing. Every year, we've had new rules or new format or new tournaments to look forward to, and this upcoming season, we have a brand new league-style format more closely related to other popular MOBA titles. Being that it's a Pokemon game, the competitive scenes started out very, not necessarily unprofessional, but very, young, I guess. Why are we... Little kids, do not argue with each other while I'm doing my video, please. Please do not. And we've come a long way since then, with year 2 of competitive offering organization opportunities for some teams, and these opportunities increasing since then. With the league format, we will likely see more of this. But what I want to talk about more is what we tend to see within and across teams and how that might affect identity development, particularly when it's very normal in esports to constantly change teams. Yes, I am indeed talking about what we colloquially refer to as roster mania. Throughout the competitive season, and especially between competitive seasons, team dynamics and performance often shapes how players feel about continuing to play with that group of individuals. We see teams break up and reform all the time, especially after facing a tough loss in a tournament or a player quitting the game. It is actually more rare for a team to actually stay together for the duration of a competitive season than it is to form and reform teams frequently throughout. The concept of changing teams frequently has been studied in traditional athletic environments, where it's been shown that changing teams a lot does affect an individual's performance, usually in a negative way, which can in turn affect identity development. Remember earlier when I brought up the engineering identity model and applied it to gamer identity? Well, this piece is really heavily related to competence. If players are looking for tournament wins or opportunities to compete at Worlds and are hopping teams constantly, this can negatively affect their individual performance, which then makes their teams not perform as well. And then that player is walking around like, what is wrong with me? Do I suck at the game? Or maybe even, does my team suck? And it leads to them continuing the team hopping process. It's related to ego too, because if someone feels like they should be a good player but their team isn't winning, they could blame other individuals and create bad social relationships. And again, if they have bad social relationships, then this also negatively impacts their identity. I'm not saying teams should stay together all the time, because goals change, conditions change, people change from year to year. I'm just saying that to strengthen the competitive identity, including perceived competence and even recognition from others, the constant switching teams is certainly not helping. My best friend, whose entire dissertation was focused on the disability identity within engineering programs, likes to say that everything is always identity research. Everything ends up contributing to identity. You're talking about the competitive scene. Well, how do we analyze the players' competitive identities? Talking about playing with other people. How do their social identities contribute to the way they interact with the game? There's always something involved in your discussion surrounding esports that contributes to identity or identity development. In terms of Pokemon Unite, they are big on leaning into the Pokemon aspect of the game to encourage people to play and watch, which is great. Having an identity built around Pokemon is so important to so many people, including me. But over time, as Unite has been recognized as the MOBA genre that it is, and in my opinion, the competitive scene has started to implement things beyond just our cute little game for kids. They're recognizing that organizations sponsor teams. Players are making this their career. They have to take it seriously as the players do. With the new competitive season coming up, I'm so impressed by the changes being made. We have an updated map, we have a league format more similar to that of other esports, and the Pokemon Company is leaning more into the players' needs to continue encouraging the development of that competitive identity. And I think we're making some pretty decent strides. For our last section, I'm going to round out how identity is represented specifically in the Unite community, potentially in the broader Pokemon community. I talked a little about the difficulties faced in identity building with specific Unite community anecdotes like the women's server disaster, but I think highlighting the community itself is crucial for our understanding of identity building as a Unite player. The first thing to highlight here is, in fact, Discord servers. Much of our community discourse exists on Twitter because that's just the social media platform I guess Unite players have. But beyond Twitter and even Reddit, we have specialized communities on Discord. Many streamers have Discord servers specifically for their community, like me, where you can talk about shared interests of your specific community. The identity within those communities becomes the identity of a shared interest in watching or interacting with that streamer or content creator. Community servers can be helpful for players interacting with each other, finding people to play with potentially, and having a more dedicated space to interact with the streamer or content creator. There are also communities based on specific competitive scenes or organizations. We have our Underdunk server, where all tournament-related activities are held. I get it. One more worm, perhaps. Oh, he wants a worm. You want a worm? You can't have the worm. Where's my Diet Coke, too? So what was I saying? Oh, okay. There's communities based on competitive scenes, yes. And so we have like an Underdunk server where all tournament-related activities happen. Luminosity has a Discord server for people to join the competitive scene. Organizations like Engage has servers to get involved in tournaments. So there are options for people interested in participating in competitive Unite, joining tournaments, finding people to play with, or even participating in competitive play in different ways, like casting, observing, or producing. This builds competitive identity as well as personal identities and perceived competence in these areas. Some bigger competitive servers have dedicated channels to discuss aspects of specific roles, like an attacker chat, where attacker players can talk about how they're participating in their role, things like that. And it's not just Unite related either, it's other things, other Pokemon games, other games in general, and some communities like mine have Discord specific community nights or watch movies together just to build that extra sense of community. Now that we have so much reach with social media, we can really build a community full of people from completely different identities while building on identities that we share, which is something that is very important. Discord servers also offer opportunities for customization of one's experience, which we've already discussed as a very important aspect of identity building. In my server and many others, when you first join, you get options to select community roles or get assigned roles by server owners or mods. Sometimes these roles give you access to different things, sometimes they're just for aesthetic. In my server, for example, you can choose which channels you want to access, so if there's channels you don't want to participate in, you can just remove them from your feed. You also select your pronouns, so I and other server members know how to refer to you, which is something many Discord servers do. And I also have one optional role to select if you're a dog, cat, fox, or ferret. Why? I don't know, it was something my community members thought would be cute, and it gives your name a different color depending on the animal you choose. Plenty of servers have things like this that are just for fun and offer more opportunities to build individual identities within a community. All these things, whether you're scared of the identity politics thing or not, are identity building activities. It makes people feel represented and also close to each other and potentially the creator or server owner who made the server. It's more personalized. Identity is another reason why creators often name their fan base, because it gives fans or community members a sense of an identity that connects them to each other. I guess you can watch my parasociality video for more on that. I would say that generally, the way that the Unite community and the Pokemon community in general is viewed is very inclusive. People within the community use their voices to condemn people who are practicing behavior that suppresses underrepresented individuals from expressing their identities or their processes of developing gaming identities. It doesn't mean we're at a place of total inclusivity, but we have been able to start standing up and creating spaces that don't stand for generally shitty behavior. People who exhibit this shitty behavior do exist and tend to create factions within the community where they can feel validated in expressing these very incorrect beliefs. But it is a good thing that many individuals with identities considered underrepresented in gaming can use their voices and feel generally supported by others, especially when so many of us are under attack very consistently in society. The internet is a place where minority voices are uplifted in a way that doesn't happen in real life, which is both good and bad. But it is extremely important that we do our best to let those voices be uplifted by being the ones to uplift them in any way we can. That's really the only way that we break down these barriers to entry for so many gamers. Now, it's important to mention here that the argument for many people who exhibit behavior or beliefs that alienate others for their identities is that they're being excluded for something as simple as their beliefs. So let me address that. You do not need to include individuals whose beliefs are that you should not exist, have the same access, or have the same rights, etc., because of your identities. You are not lacking in inclusivity for protecting your safety against individuals who hide behind the dictionary definition of the word include with the sole purpose of tearing you down and continuing to make it impossible to reach the level of acceptance as them. Inclusivity does not mean including others regardless of their morality. It means including others regardless of their identity. Even in social media situations where an inclusivity policy doesn't delineate between morality and identity, because morality is a qualitative construct, you do not need to let people who hurt you because of your identity into your space. And I can assure you, I will not let people who hurt you because of your identity into my space either. We have a long way to go in terms of being able to reach societal understanding of the importance of identity in general, never mind identity in gaming. And we have an uphill battle ahead. So continue to raise the voices of the less heard. It's scary. It involves facing adversity. And obviously there are things you shouldn't say on the internet, but maybe if we can understand the importance of identity building and how it legitimately makes our gaming spaces better, we can work towards that goal. My friend who read this pointed out that how this entire project is identity in and of itself. It's my identity, it's yours. My identity as an engineering education researcher inspires how I approached the research of this project and even drew on research I already knew of. Without that background, I probably wouldn't have come up with the idea for this video and let it get as crazy and long as it ended up getting. But as both a researcher with this type of research experience and a content creator who has a lot of passion for creating change through education within a really niche community, this came to be. And honestly, there's more I could discuss. There's more I considered discussing, but at a certain point, the script just has to be done. So this is where we are. Actually, I wrote this and then I went back and I wrote more of the script. So that's gonna be it. I'm gonna end it here. I am really looking forward to your engagement with this topic as usual. Sources are in the source box, and I will see you all next time. Bye!